No, I haven't.
Mary Scott Park, right next to West Richmond Friends Meeting.
Okay.
We're connected.
Okay.
So they are kind of our overseer in a way, but we've also lost some energy into the whole thing.
It's hard for churches, isn't it?
It's really hard.
Well, not any time. Lots of money.
Yeah.
Morning, Kenny.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. You?
I'm good. You remember Green Label?
Sure do.
I'm free.
What's the
Nice to meet you.
welcome, Lloyd?
Very nicely done. In fact, I went to his funeral. Lloyd and I went together.
Yeah. Green Labels.
Where are you from?
Oh, okay.
No, I'm originally from Lewisburg, Ohio.
Okay.
I am a graduate of Ohio.
Okay.
And we lived in Ohio, and then for 13 years lived in Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh, wow.
And then we came back to a little place outside of Madison. And I was raised in EU Beach,
Oh, I think you did.
Evangelical United Brothers,
Yes.
which combined with the Methodist in the 1960s.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard.
But I had friends in Jacksonville who were Unitarian. And when I saw, when we were by the church, I said, I think we should, I think we should at least try this out. So now 26 years ago.
His father was a
Since
steward.
then, here we are.
It's a
Right?
beautiful
Yeah.
It is.
Okay, yeah.
But we're very few of us.
Yeah, that seems to be true. I grew up in New Jersey, and we had, when I was growing up, we had 800 members. Like, not everyone obviously came, but now it's, I don't know what it is, 200. And most aren't involved, in a way. So, and that's in New Jersey, we're just watching. And when I went to my mom's funeral 2 years ago, there had been all these people, I don't know, all these people, and one of the last people that knew her died this year, 103, but they were all, but they lived for a long time. My Sunday school teacher is still on Zoom. My first grade Sunday school teacher, so it's kind of, it's actually very comforting. Okay.
I wouldn't recommend very much.
Big crowd today. Yeah. I hope everybody's having their Easter celebration at home. And hope everybody's doing well with that. Welcome to First Universalist Church of New Madison on this beautiful Easter morning. Let me get into this. We welcome a guest speaker, Stephen Cleaver. Steve's a seminary classmate of Derek's. I'm going to read what Derek put in their bulletin. A Quaker minister, a yoga instructor, a comedian, and outgoing headmaster of the private Quaker day school in Richmond, the Richmond Friends School. He's also an author and a playwright. His 2007 novel, Saving Erasmus, won the Publishers Weekly Best of the Year award, so we eagerly look forward to hearing Stephen's thoughts on Easter morning. He's contributed some slides, so we're going to put those in. You'll see those as we go along. Do we have any announcements? Mike is still, I'm assuming, still traveling. He's not here, so.
His travel's in today.
Ends today, he gets home today.
So I think he'll be in Ohio sometime today.
Sometime tonight, so hopefully safe travels there and back. Mike went to India, which is not exactly the safest place to go, so not only physically, but also disease-wise, there's some real problems there too. So you want to be careful when you're there, which I'm sure on a guided tour you should be well taken care of. Any other announcements? I don't see any. All right, our welcome is 4:30 at the back of your hymnal. And Stephen has picked he's picked the hymns and most of the content, except for the stuff that I threw in. So. For now, the winter is past. The rain is over and gone until Monday. The flowers appear on the earth. The time of singing has come. The fig tree puts forth its figs, and the vines are in blossom, and they give forth fragrance. Song of Solomon. And we have for Easter, we have our Easter lilies. And I think most of you probably know the history of the lily. Interestingly enough, lilies come from Japan and Formosa, or Taiwan. They supplied almost all the lilies in the United States until when? 1940. For some reason, we didn't import any lilies from Japan after 1940. So they started growing them in Oregon and California. So now most of our lily tubes come from California and Oregon. And as you know, it's got a long history of Christian relativity due to the blossoms symbolize purity, rebirth, the traditional history of the lily. So we're glad to have those today. All right, our chalice lighting for holy days on which we recall old stories. We light the flame. For Passover, which reminds us of the courage and strength of those seeking freedom in the past, we light the flame. For Easter, which reminds us that love is our greatest challenge, we light the flame. For gathering today in this sacred space, we light the flame. For the opportunity to be together as a community, to remember the past, to plan for our future, to be alive in our present. Our opening hymn is number 61, Lo, the Earth Awakens.
There's a prelude first, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I totally missed the prelude, didn't I? Prelude. I wonder why the candle wasn't lit.
I'm playing the prelude in the title.
You guys have to remind me when I do this. You had plenty of practice with Richard. Thank you. Jesus Paid It All was the prelude, and we cannot miss the music at the beginning, one of the most important components of going to church, and as you know, most important to me. All right, our opening hymn is 61, Lo, the Earth Awakens. daffodils, multiple colors. They're really blooming everywhere, except for the ones I planted in front of the church. They're coming up, but they're not in bloom yet, so hopefully they'll get here before the end of spring. All right, our children's story is a little composite of the Easter story, but it's done with Legos.
Are you skipping the affirmation?
Oh, yes, I am doing that.
Easter story begins.
I'm all out balance today. All right, affirmation is 466, and that's in the back of your hymnal. Thanks for the reminder. Religion. Let religion be to us and joy. Let it be a voice of renewing challenge to the best we have and may be. Let it be a call to generous action. Let religion be to us a dissatisfaction with things that are, which bids us serve more eagerly the true and right. Let it be sorrow, for that opens us the way of sympathy, understanding, and service to suffering humanity. Let religion be to us the wonder and lure of that which is only partly known and understood. An eye that glories in nature's majesty and beauty, and a heart that rejoices in deeds of kindness and courage. Let religion be to us security and serenity because of its truth and its beauty, and because of the enduring worth and power of the loyalties which it engenders. Let it be to us hope and purpose, and the discovering of opportunities to express our best through daily tasks. Religion uniting us with all that is admirable in human beings everywhere, holding before our eyes a prospect of a better life for humankind, which each may help to make actual. Vincent Silliman. All right, now the Legos.
On Palm Sunday, Jesus entered Jerusalem on a donkey. The crowds shouted, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." They waved palm branches and laid their cloaks on the ground. A few days later, Jesus and his disciples were sharing the Passover meal. Jesus predicted that one of them would betray him, and his disciples were shocked and saddened. Jesus broke the bread and said, "This is my body, broken for you." Then he took the wine and said, "This is my blood of the covenant, poured out for many." Jesus said to Peter, "Before the cock crows this very night, you will disown me 3 times. But Peter insisted, "I am willing to die with you, Jesus. I will never disown you." Jesus and his disciples went out to the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus asked his disciples to keep watch while he prayed. "Abba, Father," he said, "everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will." Then Judas came to betray Jesus to the Jewish leaders. Jesus was arrested and the disciples ran away. The Jewish leaders put Jesus on trial before the high priest. Even though Jesus was innocent, he didn't defend himself from the false accusations made against him. When the high priest asked Jesus, "Are you the Messiah?" Jesus answered, "I am." Then the high priest condemned Jesus to death and beat him. While Jesus was on trial, Peter was in the courtyard below. 3 times people asked Peter if he knew Jesus, but 3 times Peter denied knowing him. Then the cock crowed, and Peter remembered what Jesus had said, and he wept. Jesus was then taken to Pilate, the Roman governor. Pilate knew Jesus was innocent, but the crowd shouted, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" And Pilate was afraid. So Pilate let Barabbas, a murderer, go free instead of Jesus. They dressed Jesus in a purple robe and a crown of thorns. Jesus was crucified on Good Friday with a thief either side of him. At 12 o'clock, in the middle of the day, darkness came over the whole land for 3 hours. Jesus cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Then he breathed his last. When the Roman centurion saw how Jesus died, he said, "Surely this man was the Son of God." After Jesus died, his body was placed in a tomb, and a heavy stone was rolled across the entrance. the Sabbath was over, Mary and the women came early on Sunday morning to anoint Jesus' body, according to the Jewish custom. But when they got there, the stone had been rolled away, and the tomb was empty. An angel told them the good news. Jesus is not here, he has risen from the dead.
And just like at the time of Christ, it will be dark in the middle of the day in a week and a half. But only for 3 minutes, or 3 minutes and 42 seconds, something like that. So be sure and get your, if you're going to look, be sure and get your solar glasses. You can find them almost anywhere for between $1 and $2 a piece, but it is very dangerous to look at the sun for longer than 2 or 3 seconds without glasses. All right. What do we have for joys and concerns? We have our standard, our sunflowers for Ukraine. Nothing much has changed there. As I go through every week, the Ukrainians are being pushed back primarily due to a lack of support from the countries and civilizations that supposedly are supporting them. Israel, we still are at loggerheads with the Israeli government. We are asking and requesting and almost demanding that they not invade the last town in southern Gaza with 1.5 million or 2 million refugees there and no place to go, and they are insisting they are going to do that. So we don't have an end to that yet. Baltimore, I'm sure you saw the collapse of the bridge. 6 construction workers went in the water, 4 were killed. Does anybody know where they were from? Every one of them was, even the 2 that were saved, Guatemala, Honduras, Ecuador, and Mexico. Working at night shift, filling potholes on the bridge. Immigrants are important. And if you watch the interviews, none of the families, hardly any of the families spoke any English. They all still spoke Spanish. So immigrants are part of our nation. They do a worthwhile job, and they need to be considered. The other one I'm going to throw in is the White House egg rolls. Anybody seen the contretemps over that? The right wing is all upset because this year they announced that when the White House egg roll is hard-boiled eggs with kids use spoons, and they're the kids of National Guard troops who are serving overseas are invited to the White House, but they are asked politely not to do any discriminatory, hateful, anti-anybody or religious symbols. So the right wing, of course, Fox News has said we've thrown Christianity out of Easter. What a terrible thing to happen that Biden has done. Somebody looked up the rules. The same rules have applied since 1942. So the same rules applied when Trump was president, only nobody said anything about it. So it's just part of the awareness that people have to have. When you see a big alarm ginned up about how terrible things are going, don't always pay attention to that. So, anything else? Mike will light a candle for safe travels. Hopefully he's on the final leg of his journey and everything will go well.
Let's not forget Haiti. Haiti.
Oh yes, Haiti. Haiti is in a terrible position. The actual gangs are running the airport. I mean, the seaport, the country is being run by gangs who are fighting on each other. And the last news that I saw was that they want to be included. The gang leaders want to be included in the assembly of leaders that choose what happens to Haiti. I don't know what to say about that. I mean, somebody has to step in. The United Nations or the Assembly of Caribbean Nations has to step in and take control of it. All right, one final candle for those questions, comments, fears, hopes, desires that you cannot express and maybe aren't even aware of. All right, our scripture. Do you want me to read it, Stephen, or do you want to do it?
No, you could.
All right.
Take it away.
Well, I'll probably screw it up like everything else. part of the thing. This is John 13:36, and we are, and we've talked about this before. We have everybody here almost, I would assume, has a Christian heritage and does not mind Christianity in a Unitarian Universalist church. We are welcoming to any other expression of faith, and we'll make room for any other, but we want to celebrate our history and our culture at the same time. Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, where are you going?" Jesus answered, "Where I am going, you cannot follow me now, but you will follow afterward." The message by Stephen is Living into Mystery. And let me come on up and I'll show you how to flip the slides here. Stephen has brought his own slides. Just like anything else, just hit the forward button or the back button, wherever you want to go.
See what happens with all this. Wow. Well, welcome. Many years ago when my book came out, I was doing talks, and I did a talk at the Staten Island Public Library, and I think 3 people showed up. One of them was a friend, and another one was her daughter. And I talked to another author, and she said, "Your job is to show up." And she said she had done a talk someplace, and I'll say there was only a couple people there. And at the end of the talk, a person came up to her and said, "I've been waiting to see you for 10 years. And so that left a message in with me about the importance of showing up. So good morning, welcome, happy Easter. I'm going to start with a poem by Wendell Berry. I think it's called The Little Stream Sings. I kept searching for it, but we'll say, "The little stream sings in the crease of the hill. It is the water of life. It knows nothing of death, nothing. And this is the morning of Christ's resurrection. The tomb is empty. There is no death. Death is our illusion, our wish to belong only to ourselves, which is our freedom to kill one another. From this sleep, may we too rise as out of the dark grave." So I'm going to give you a little bio, even though Derek seems to have sent some promo forward, which is really nice. My name is Steve Cleaver. Last name seems to be easy for most of the people in my generation to remember. I'm a Quaker, and I was begot from a long line of Quaker begatting. Two of my great uncles were headmasters of Quaker schools. 3 of my great-grandparents were Quaker pastors, and one in Indiana, in Noblesville, somewhere around there. That being said, I grew up on the East Coast at Morristown meeting, and we were unprogrammed. We did have music though, so I loved the songs. And then I was trying to figure out what to do with my life. I ran a nonprofit for a number of years, and I kept looking, I'll get an MBA. And then I was looking at an MBA at Quaker schools, like I think it's Malone's. And then I just decided I'm trying to get the MDiv, and I came to the Earlham School of Religion. I'd never really read the Bible until then. You know, I'd read parts. I think the deepest appreciation of those stories came from my practicum when I was at Earlham School of Religion, when I worked with the people at the Interfaith Housing in Richmond. These were poor people in their 80s, but their stories were consistent with biblical stories. And I just remember one woman taking her walker and kind of stamping it, saying, "We have to do more for people." I graduated from ESR with Derek. I wrote a book called Saving Erasmus. It got published by Paraclete Press, which is a whole other story. They had their assistant there was named Sister Mercy Minor, which somebody thought was quite ironic. I embarked on this peripatetic journey after graduate school, and I ended up in places like Omega Institute. Has anyone heard of Omega Institute? So it was started in Rhinebeck, New York by a guy, Pir Balayat Inayat Khan, who's head of the Sufis, and Ram Dass. Does anyone ever heard of Ram Dass? Be here now, but he isn't here. Anyway. And then I returned to Earlham, and I was the interim religious life director in a year when there was a train accident that killed 2 students. I took a break after that, retrained in yoga, and started in a role in administration at the Richmond Friends School, which is the only Quaker school in Indiana. 3 years ago, I became head of school, and I'm going to leave in June because I want to open into my writing and my yoga practice. So that's a lot of deaths and rebirths. And what of the liminal space in between called the unknown or mystery. In some ways today, we know what's happening or what happened, but most of our lives are lived on Saturday in between. And this is the morning of Christ's resurrection, Wendell Berry writes. The tomb is empty. There is no death. We know that now. This day is all about the knowing. And by the way, Tim said my talk should be about 2 hours, so I hope everyone's ready for that. We know the door was open this morning and that the water got put on for coffee. But what do we know in the moments before we know? Now, when I was asked to do the Easter sermon, I thought, oh my gosh, I can't really do Easter. That's a big day. And then I remembered when I was at ESR, and I ended up doing a sermon on Monday, Thursday, which I have no concept of at the time. I'm an Enneagram 9. Does anyone know the Enneagram here? Okay. Well, anyway, so I want to be all inclusive. I'm a peacemaker. So there was a woman on the worship committee who wanted a Catholic song, so I put it in. Then I got the idea, because we're connected to Bethany, I do foot washing. We don't do foot wash. Quakers don't do foot washing. But I thought, well, I'll just do that. I had a lot of discernment. I met with professors. Some said I could do it. Some said I couldn't. Finally figured it out. So I set up a foot washing station in the back. Not today, though, but I did that day. But that night I was sitting in the computer lab working on my sermon. And I came to the scripture reading from John 13:36, where Simon Peter says, Lord, where are you going? And Jesus answered, where am I going? You cannot follow me now, but you will follow me afterwards. As I read this passage, I started crying. When I was 3, my father had a stroke and was taken to the hospital for 6 months. I was reminded of that sadness and griefs and goodbyes that came after, and how painful the uncertainty is. And so what of the disciples? They have followed this man, believed in him, perhaps given up their jobs, and yet now he's just going to go, and they can't follow him. Where I go, you cannot follow. Peter does not truly know where Jesus is going. And how many of us have been in that space of unknowing with someone, even just sending your child off to the first day of school, a goodbye that lingers until they return home. Today we know how the story ends, but Peter does not. And Peter lives in that space of mystery, perhaps the place that requires the deepest faith. And of course he's challenged. So anyway, back to my sermon that I was going to give. So I start to give it. I brought the message. The Catholic hymn went well. I kept everything flowing smoothly, and I felt all had worked out well as I ended the service. And then I had a big realization. I had forgotten the foot washing. So the people were in the back ready to wash feet, and it just slipped my mind. I wanted certainty, but I didn't control the ending. And in hindsight, I look back on that time and I think, what if I had just started my sermon and left and not come back? What would that have been, even in that short space of time, of unknowing to people? I thought about doing that today, but I didn't have the faith to pull that off, and I thought maybe I'd end up outside locked out or something. And so Tim asked me about slides, and I've actually, I'll go into the next one, because let's see what I can do here. Oh, that's the stream. That's the Wendell Berry stream. We'll work with this as it goes. But I have about 200 to go through. No, I don't. But I thought,
he actually had 10, and I said he could only have 4.
There's a limit. Then I was thinking on the ride over, what if they were all blank, right? Because in that mystery, in that blankness, we may have fear, we might have doubt, but we also have possibility. A tabula rasa that we can write a story on. And we live in mystery. You didn't know much about me. I mean, you'd seen a bio, but what do you know when you see that? And so we're both, all of us, entering into an unwritten story, and we're writing it as we go. Now, when I wrote to Tim, I guess yesterday, he mailed back, barring unforeseen circumstances, I usually open the doors by 9:15. And your webpage, by the way, has an open door, so hot water for coffee follows immediately, which it's back there. But I expect the doors to be open, but what if there are unforeseen circumstances? What if it's locked? And then I got here and I thought, am I really supposed to be here today? And on the drive here, which I've never driven this drive before, I'm open to the mystery of what I see. It's not just about the destination, it's also the journey in between. Today we know that the rock has moved away and the resurrection's complete. But even that has its own mystery, does it not? Now, I'm in a liminal space now. I love that term, liminal space. I don't know if it's a word. No, it is. A rich space of diversity. It's where things cross over. As I leave my job, I'm also leaving categories. I woke up the other day thinking, who am I? Has anyone ever asked yourself that question? No? Yeah, I do all the time. And I arrived at the school in 2015. My father had just died. 2 years ago, my mother died. So technically people said you're an orphan. So that's a change. And I wake up sometimes and worry. My full-time salary ends at the end of June. Now, when I had anxiety at age 40, it was different. You create all these things. When you're 60, those things are a little, you're worried about are like, oh, they're becoming reality. It's a little different. I created a prayer for myself. It's called Prayer for a Joyful Transition. I read it every morning. I ask for God to illuminate the darkness and for me to leave the school a better place than when I found it. I have to be honest, that saying, be careful what you pray for. It's been the most challenging 2 months, these last 2 months. And I brought the school through COVID and some other stuff. I think God's just reminding me, like maybe throwing things at that chrysalis I'm still stuck in, and saying, but the job's been perfect for me because it's worked out my rough edges and I've come up against old wounds. I leave a very different person when I arrived. Now, I've been the head of school for 3 years, so I joke to people, has anyone ever seen Jesus Christ Superstar? You're a liberal congregation, you can see that. Where he sings that song, I tried for 3 years, seems like 30. Well, that's what it's like to be a school head right now. But we find examples of resurrection that support us. How many people read The Velveteen Rabbit? Yeah, come on, everybody here. You can admit it, yeah. Anyway, it's a great little story in some ways. We have the stuffed bunny who stays with the boy until the boy gets sick and then finally is discarded. What is real? Asked the rabbit one day when he's lying side by side near the nursery fender before Nana came to tidy the room. Does it mean having things that buzz inside you and stick out handle? Real isn't how you're made, said the skin horse. It's a thing that happens to you. When a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real. Does it hurt? Asked the rabbit. Sometimes, said the skin horse, for he was always truthful. But when you're real, you don't mind being hurt. Does it happen all at once like being wound up or bit by bit? It doesn't happen all at once, said the skin horse. You become. It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't happen often to people who break easily or have sharp edges or have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been loved off and your eyes drop out and you get loose in the joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all because once you are real, you can't be ugly except to people who don't understand. We become real, but in the space between, do we even know we are transforming or peeling layers, as is often said? I know much of my hair has been loved off, and I guess I'm getting loose in the joints, but am I real yet? When I teach a yoga class, my intent is that we do a number of the postures or asanas, some breathing, and perhaps a meditation that helps to connect the body, mind, and soul. In yoga, so if you know some modalities, from a biological standpoint, we take in oxygen, we take in But in yoga, we're taking in life force, or what's called prana. If you've ever heard the word pranayama, that's breathing practices. So we're taking in life force. It goes through our nadis, all these nadis, and we have all the, we can get into chakras and all that, but not today. But anyway, and so we fill with life force. So the Buddhas with the big bellies, that's life force, right? So that's why they have the big bellies. And then at the end of a practice, after all of this, we do something called shavasana, which is also called corpse posture. So at the end of a practice, we're connected, and then we go beyond, and it's a little death, right? And then there's a resurrection of kinds as we come back out of that. Now we come back into the same story in the narrative, but maybe a little bit changed. Now some of you might know of The Lord of the Rings. Has anyone ever watched those movies? Right? And Gandalf, right? What does Gandalf do, right? He's Gandalf the Grey in the beginning, right? And he takes those poor hobbits who never want to leave the Shire. And I identify with the hobbits. I wouldn't have left the Shire if I could have. But anyway, at one point, Gandalf takes on the Balrog, which is a demon, like the oldest demon ever, right? It's this huge Balrog, you shall not pass. And I had a teacher no, I'm kidding. Anyway, but he takes on the Balrog, falls through all these layers to a mountaintop, and there he smites the Balrog. And you see Gandalf in the movie, and he comes back to life. Now he's Gandalf the White, and he's more powerful, and he's moved back in, and he's going to help them to the end of the journey. Of course, we also know C.S. Lewis, right? The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Did anyone as a kid ever go back in their closet and... No, you didn't. But anyway... Aslan is the lion, and he represents sort of Christ, and he gives his life so Edmund can be saved and brought back to life. Of course, in between there's a battle, and we're not sure, but Aslan's death causes despair in him. But then we see the ending, and Aslan's is brought back to life. Now remember, this is all due to Edmund taking that Turkish delight, which is not really that delightful. Oh, I can change this too. I'll see what's next. Sorry. Yeah. There we go. And the phoenix. I love this imagery of the phoenix. The phoenix is supposedly like 500 to 1,000 years old. So it spreads its wing and supposedly sings over a large mass of firewood, which I think is its nest. It takes all the stuff. So as we transform, I'm thinking as I'm moving, I'm taking all my stuff, I'm decluttering my house. So that's kind of my nest. And kindles a fire, and when it burns in the fire, an egg emerges from it, which immediately catches fire and burns, and another phoenix is born. We have these opportunities for ourselves if we're open to it. And also, if we get rid of sort of these old parts of our story, we have narrative, but it can change. And we can change how we look at it, who we are. When I wrote my novel, so I wrote this novel years ago. Tom Mullen's book is back there, but Tom was the professor in that class, and I would meet with him once a week and write. And I would bring in, it was always usually the night before I'd finish it, but I wrote a novel in one semester. And I worked with an editor on it, and I sent her this whole thing. It was like over 300 pages, and she trimmed like 90 pages out. I didn't notice anything of specific that I missed, except she changed the ending. And my ending is left with what I would call faith unseen. You don't know exactly what happens. She changed it to what I call Christian light, where everyone was waving and smiling and whatever. And I first was like, I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to cancel this. And then I was like, I sent them a theological argument for why it was important that this not have an ending that was clear. And they stuck with it. I got it. So that was great. We can look back to Wendell Berry's writing in Nature and all the lilies and so on and so forth. I didn't realize they were so new to the area. I love lilies. We perhaps plant the bulbs in the winter. We don't know what's going to come up. Sometimes the squirrels take them. I plant them. They get moved. I don't know what happens. It's a beauty in the season, right? It's something beautiful about this ground that lies sort of cold and covered, that then something emerges, and we get to see that every spring. My peony comes back up. I look for it. gives me that affirmation. And we think of the incredible metamorphosis of the caterpillar. Now, when I was a kid, I lived on a farm in New Jersey. There are farms in New Jersey, and they are off the turnpike somewhere. But my parents would give each of us $1 if we would find a monarch caterpillar, and we'd bring it back, we'd put it in a jar, and it would form the chrysalis, right? And then out of that would come the caterpillar. Oops, let me go back. Can I go back here? Oh yeah, there we go. And it's such a magical event, and we still do this with our kids in the classroom. It's so amazing. You can't make that up. You know, you couldn't. There's no way. And the kids are so excited. They take them out on the back porch and they let them go. Now, not all the caterpillars make it. They also had eggs one time, and not all the eggs made it. One time, too many eggs made it. It's a whole other thing. I think of Mary Oliver as one of my favorite poets. She wrote a poem about the butterfly. The caterpillar, interesting but not exactly lovely, humped along the parsley leaves, eating, always eating. Then one night it was gone, and in its place a small green confinement hung by 2 silk threads on a parsley stem. I think it took nothing with it except faith and patience, and then one morning it expressed itself into the most beautiful being. So the caterpillar puts all of itself into this, it consumes itself, every bit of it. And then if all goes well, it finds its way out. But what the caterpillar calls the end of the world, the master calls a butterfly, Richard Bach wrote. To go in the dark with a light is to know the light. To know the dark, go without sight, and find that the dark too blooms and sings, and it's traveled by dark feet and dark wings. And that's by Wendell Berry. In this darkness, the liminal between the death of one and the rebirth is this mystery. There's also an abundance of possibility. From this sleep may we too rise as out of the dark grave. Can we live into the certainty, or the certainty of uncertainty, into mystery? And Mary Oliver writes of mysteries. She writes, mysteries, yes. Truly we live with mysteries too marvelous to be understood. How grass can be nourishing in the mouths of the lambs. How rivers and stones are forever in allegiance with gravity, while we ourselves dream of rising. How 2 hands touch and the bonds will never be broken. How people come from delight or the scars of damage to the comfort of a poem. Let me keep my distance always from those who think they have the answers. Let me keep company always with those who say, look, and laugh in astonishment and bow their heads. Let me keep my distance always from those who think they have the answers. Let me keep company always with those who say, look, and laugh in astonishment and bow their heads. May we find our way in the darkness and rise out of our sleep, our dark graves, our shavasana or corpse posture, ready to take on a new day and perhaps a new narrative. May we live into the questions, embracing the mystery, and to be alive, as you say in the beginning, in the present. Happy Easter.
With all your travels and experience, do you have any thoughts on the wellspring of faith? Where does faith come from?
I don't know. It's a good question. So I certainly have my own journey to faith. At one point I was actually diagnosed with PTSD, so there takes a lot of faith to live into that. I don't know, there's some kernel somewhere that comes to us, some little seed is, and you just keep, I think when you're searching in this world, you keep reconnecting with that until it gets stronger. You know, we have a negativity bias, right? Do you know about that? So as human beings, in our DNA, in our brain, you know, we had to survive. So often, if we ate something good, that was fine, we'd live. But if we ate something bad, we die. So we became very conscious of the negative, and that's a negativity bias to survive. We're not in that role anymore. So I think that gets triggered by most of us, right? Even in these times, how do we come back? So I think I know faith for me was always that there was something. I don't know what's the difference for people who take one path versus the other. I've asked that question over and over, because certainly there were a number of trajectory times where I could have taken something and kept true to that belief system. I don't know. That's a good question.
Do we have a choice, or is it determined?
Oh, wow. I think we have a choice. I think that my sense is, I hope nobody thinks I have the answers because I just said I don't, but I think that my sense is we come into this world, and maybe there are many, many others, I don't know, I've read many different things. Read Autobiography of a Yogi if you want a bizarre little trip. But I think is to become whole, and I think those opportunities come to us, and so I'm reading a book by there's a guy, Matt Kahn, and so I think if we can learn that what life brings us is an opportunity to grow, whatever that looks like, and can use that, then it becomes a growth process. So do we have a choice? I think eventually we don't get a choice what comes our way naturally, but we get our choice, our perspective. And that, I think, is where faith comes in, and not just a faith of, God, but a faith of deeper connection. I think one of the biggest, I'm going to go way off now, but the biggest things is connection. And that faith brings us that connection is crucial to human beings. And there's studies done on connection and drug addiction, that the answer to drug addiction is not the answer, but the way people can move through that is connection. We connect with others. We're not just in our pain alone. That's a greater pain, when we grieve or whatever. We have our moments of isolation. The book I wrote, I was reading Niebuhr at the time, and he talks about, how we come into faith through community and then an individual journey. So that's a long way of talking, but I did have coffee on. I didn't have your coffee.
That's decaf.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Thanks for reminding me that it's maybe smarter to not think you have the answers. I have a tendency to think I've got the answers to things. I need to be reminded every now and then that I don't.
You're welcome. It gets me into trouble all the time. And it leaves us not open to possibility. It leaves us like, I know this. And of course, for me, sometimes what I think I know is based on a past where things were different. And if we're trying to change, then yeah, we have to really open into that mystery. Yeah, thanks. Ty, T-Y-E.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Do you hold up cards with numbers? I'm kidding.
We have a secret vote afterwards.
Kick me off the island.
But it'll be revealed in your check. All right. Let's see. Our offering, we're going to hear He Leadeth Me. As is usual, if you have something to contribute, please drop it in the pan. If you need something, please let us know. We will help as we are able. to See. Never forget how blessed we are to have a pianist and an organist who practically outnumber the congregants. It's just an amazing thing, and I never get tired of thanking both of you for your contributions. It really makes our service. All right, extinguishing the chalice is 6:27. Seasons of the Self. We need a celebration that speaks to the spring-inspired word about life and death, about us as we live and die. Through all the cycling seasons, days, years, we need the sense of deity to crack our own hard brown December husks and push life out of the inner tombs and outer pain. Unless we move the seasons of the self and spring can come for us, the winter will go on and on. And Easter will remain a myth, and life will never come again, despite the fact of spring. Max Coots. Very profound. All right, you're probably wondering what this is. Does anybody have a guess even? You know it's got something to do with horses?
Jockeys, right?
These are jockeys. These are a picture of the jockeys that won and that were finished in the Kentucky Derby in I think it was 1894. The Kentucky Derby started in like 1888 or something like that. And the first 16 out of 20 races were won by a black jockey. And then what happened in the South after the Civil War? With the retrenchment and the rise of the KKK, the white jockeys got together and basically boxed in the black jockeys when they were racing. They hit them with their whips. They intimidated them in the stalls and in the stables at night, and basically forced the black jockeys out of the racing business. So the last win from a black jockey was in 1898. There was never another black jockey in the Kentucky Derby until 2003. So you say racism doesn't exist in America? Racism is still there. We have to be aware of it. All we have to do is be aware of it and say we're not going to have that happen again. But don't say that it doesn't exist in the 60s or 70s, that the great society changed all that. So that's the reason. On the left is the black jockey that won. His name was Lawrence, I think. And this is a black jockey, and then you have the two white jockeys. The picture was actually bigger than this, and there's more white and more black. But in the beginning, they all raced together, and you know why the black jockeys started out winning the Kentucky Derby, because in the original time, the black jockeys and the black groomsmen took care of the horses. They trained the horses, they exercised the horses knew them, and the horses ran for them. It wasn't until prejudice took over that they were forced out. So. All right, another little liberal leaning at the end here. Chaz and Paula are gone, so they didn't bring their coffee, but I actually brought brewed coffee this time. I put it in the pot, so it's not instant. There's real Starbucks decaf coffee in the pot. There's little Easter candies that I just couldn't pass up, Easter cupcakes, so indulge yourself. Make room for your Easter repast later, but indulge for now. All right, our postlude. What a wonderful life. Very nice. All right, we have our last candle, and we're glad for all the health recurrences, the positive health experiences we've had. And let me read this. We extinguish this flame with the light of truth for which it burns, the promise of hope for which it shines, and the love of this beloved community for which it stands will go with us until we meet again. All right. That closes our service. Have a good day.
Thanks. It was interesting, good. Is that when you say that about a date or something?
Yeah,
It's usually like, oh, that was interesting. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks.